Ma'am, I need you to step outside right now. The HOA president has filed a trespassing complaint. Those were the first words out of the young deputy's mouth when he stood at the bottom of my porch steps, hand resting on his holster, blue and red lights, painting the pines like some bad portrait, and Karen Langford stood beside him with that perfect little smirk, arms crossed. As if she just smelled something she didn't like, which was funny, because she was the only stench out here. I didn't flinch, didn't stand, just sipped my coffee and watched the lake glitter in the morning light. And when the deputy blinked and looked at me like he wanted a confession, I said, soft as a prayer, "You might want to call your supervisor, or better yet, the county commissioner. This cabin's mine. In fact, this whole county's mine." His eyebrows did that little twitch people get when the ground shifts under them, and Karen's smugness slipped like a mask just for a second, and that was the moment I knew things were about to get interesting. But you can't rush a story like this, so let me start at the beginning. Because people like Karen don't show claws up front. They purr first, then pounce. My name's Arthur Bennett. I'm 67, retired from commercial land development. 30 years in steel-toed boots, hard hats, and smelling like sawdust and diesel. And I bought this strip of lake and pines 25 years ago when no one else wanted to be out this far. When it was just earth and sky and quiet, and I built this cabin with my hands, poured the foundation, cut the timber, carved the porch swing. Everything you see was earned, not bought. For years, it was perfect, the kind of place where coffee tastes like Sunday morning, even on Tuesday, until that developer rolled into town, built a gated community up the lake with pretty houses, private roads, and of course, an HOA with rules tighter than a preacher's collar. At first, I didn't care. Their life was theirs, my life was mine, until the rules started creeping outward like cold weather. First, it was voluntary contributions, then lake permits, then a paper slipped into my mailbox 3 months ago from Cedar Ridge HOA, signed by Karen herself, saying my cabin now fell within their jurisdiction and I had to conform to their visual harmony standards or else. I laughed at the paper, thought a mistake, but the laugh turned sour when drones started hovering over my dock and smiling neighbors walked their golden retrievers a little too close to my property line, and then came the citations, taped to my gate like a child's taunt. I didn't yell, didn't run to a lawyer right away. Sometimes quiet wins, but Memorial Day changed the math. My daughter and her family were visiting. The boys were fishing off my dock, ribs hot on the grill, and a black SUV came tearing down the gravel like it owned the road. Karen and a couple of her cronies spilled out in HOA vests, shouting trespassing like they were delivering justice. I walked up, cool as shade, told Karen she was mistaken, and she snapped she'd call the sheriff. 20 minutes later, 3 sheriff cars rolled up, lights off, and I was back in my chair telling the deputy, politely, "You might want to double-check your records before you do something you'll regret." And when he went quiet and checked, he came back with that softer tone and said, "Sir, the records show you own over 800 acres out here, including the land around Cedar Ridge." Karen went pale, and I realized then that she hadn't done her homework. Big mistake. Of course, she didn't stop. She escalated. She came back the next morning with bolt cutters and a padlock and locked my gate from the outside, declaring I was in violation of some phantom ordinance. She left like she'd won a game. I went inside, pulled the thick folder from under the shelf. Every deed, map, tax receipt for the land I'd quietly bought over decades, and called Ellie Granger, my lawyer, and Roger, the county commissioner, my poker buddy. By noon, we had filed a temporary no-access notice blocking their easement until they could prove legal access. I wasn't being petty. I was protecting what I'd spent a lifetime building, but the more I pushed back, the harder Karen pressed. She tried the paperwork route, then the federal route. One morning, a man in a dark suit walked up my porch with a silver badge, Agent Frank Wheeler from the Department of Environmental Enforcement, saying someone had reported I was draining lake water into wetlands. I watched him poke at my gravel and my roots and smile politely as he found nothing. Karen had filed a federal complaint to muddy the waters, literally, and that was the tell. She was getting desperate and sloppy. I documented everything. Drone footage of their trespassing, GPS tracks, HOA emails, and then, midweek, one of my trail cameras picked up something that changed everything. Freshly dug dirt near the north property line, a half-buried plastic pipe snaking through my woods toward the HOA entrance. I followed it and found their illegal storm overflow line running straight through my trees into a protected patch. Suddenly, the false environmental complaint made sense. It was smoke to hide the real fire, and that pipe was their fingerprint. I sat on that discovery like a man with a loaded hand. And then I went where Karen least expected me, to their clubhouse meeting in a blazer smelling faintly of cut wood, and I handed their board copies of deeds, inspection photos, and a typed letter that said politely, "Remove your pipe and your cameras from my land in 72 hours, or I'm filing suit." I left the room before the applause started. They sent construction crews into my yard anyway. Men with permits that meant nothing, because paperwork lies flat next to the truth of a deed, and I handed the foreman a copy and a fresh bottle of water and told him to turn around before it got ugly. He left, and Karen came screaming, "You humiliated me." And I told her quietly, "You're about to learn a lesson about respect and pride and what happens when you pick the wrong fight." She didn't believe me. She shouldn't have. That was her hubris. Here comes the twist. 2 years earlier, I'd bought the mineral rights under Cedar Ridge cheap from an old surveyor who didn't care about surface property. Most folks don't think about people who hold the ground underneath their feet, but mineral rights give you the power to freeze development until an environmental impact study is done. I filed a land freeze the morning after their bulldozer came and watched Karen's face when she read the certified notice that meant no construction, no sales, no closing until the law said otherwise. Her empire started to wobble. But power makes people dangerous, and danger has its own timing. Late one night, my gate burned. Flames fed by accelerant, the smell sharp and familiar, a message meant to scare me into silence. I wasn't surprised. I'd planned for this. My grandson had put wildlife cameras up a week earlier, and they caught a car, a license plate, a figure pouring fuel, and striking a match. I handed the footage to Sheriff Cole, who'd known me since he bagged groceries as a kid and watched the law move like a slow, steady tide. The footage led to an arrest, but things kept accelerating. Turncoats appeared. Neighbors who'd been cowed by Karen started to come forward with signed statements. And one of her earliest supporters, Walter, brought me a letter from his daughter, Lacey, saying they'd seen too much and couldn't stay silent. People began to breathe again. Karen tried to claw back control by filing emergency votes, doctoring forms, even trying to condemn my cabin with falsified reports. That's where the real ugliness was exposed. I walked into the town hall with a 94-page packet, notarized records of forged votes, unauthorized surveillance, illegal pipes, falsified complaints, and handed it to the room. The mayor read a public statement, 3 board members walked out, and the crowd started to see the whole house of cards. I had Ellie beside me with mineral deeds and county stamps, and when I announced the land freeze in the microphone under the fluorescent lights, applause rolled like thunder. Karen stormed out, but storms don't always end when the wind dies down. You'd think that would be the end, but snakes strike when cornered. 2 nights later, a man showed up on my dock holding a gun. He stepped out of the mist like bad weather, cheap sunglasses, hands like a fist, and told me he'd been promised money to handle me. I didn't move much. Old men don't have to be brave, they just need to be steady, and I hit the silent alarm my grandson had helped me rig. Deputies came quiet as thunder. The man dropped his weapon, and the arrest made news. The headline the next day, HOA president linked to attempted armed assault, was the cleaver that split the rotten core. There was no gloating in it for me. I don't celebrate people falling, not really. I celebrate the end of a thing that hurt neighbors, the return of a little quiet. The county revoked Cedar Ridge's charter, ethics complaints were filed, and Karen lost everything. The house, the authority, her name in the paper as a cautionary tale. I testified before the state Senate when Senator Marcus Hale called, and they passed a landowner protection bill with my story at the center, the Bennett Landowner Protection Act, because the system needed a shove to remember whose land it is and what rules mean when people try to bend them into clubs. If there's a lesson here, it's not the cinematic one about revenge, it's quieter than that. Power without accountability is a dangerous thing. Silence without proof is easy to take advantage of. And sometimes the best defense is patience and paperwork and neighbors who remember kindness. I thought about those nights of building with my own hands, about my wife's laugh in the kitchen, about my grandson's muddy sneakers by the dock. And I realized peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the quiet in your chest when you've done the right thing and can sleep knowing you didn't let someone else write your story for you. We patched the gate, the kids came back to fish off the dock, and I still rock on the porch most mornings, coffee steaming, the lake like a polished coin under the sun. People bring sweet rolls sometimes. Neighbors who used to whisper now stop to say hello. Karen's name faded into courthouse papers and auction listings, relocated somewhere far from here. I don't relish her downfall. I'm mourn the way people can be swallowed by their own hunger for control, but I do take comfort in seeing justice done, slow and clumsy as it can be. So here's what I want to leave you with. When rules are used to bully, speak up, but do it with evidence, patience, and allies, because truth backed by paper and witnesses is a stubborn thing. And one last thing, tell me, was it justice or was it karma? Did I go too far when I froze the development? Or did I simply protect what was mine and what belonged to everyone around here? Drop your thoughts below. Tell me if you've ever been pushed out by rules gone wild, and share your story. Because if enough of us speak, maybe the next Karen won't find an audience for her theater of control.